We have got all the distinguished panelists at one place, and we are talking about the capabilities after the Prime Minister call of self-reliance, what we call Atmanirbhar Bharat. But let me put that also in the perspective from western border Ladakh to eastern Sikkim and further down to Uttarakhand, the Chinese and our adversaries are raking up, and security and defense keep coming as a priority off and on, and we keep talking about the capability aspect here. But today, the debate, that's what we're going to address the fundamental aspect. What are the hindrances are there, obstacles are there, and the recent call for the prime ministers, we talk about the fundamental elements. Say some of the projects delayed, DPP 2020, FDI from 49 to 74%. So these fundamental questions we will address. But we'll also, let me point it out, and let me put that in a perspective. From the Air Force perspective, we are down to 30 squadron. Our MMRC 2A is still not in the track. LCA Tejas Mark 1A 83, which gets inducted in the squadron by the 2025. Coming back to the Army, FRCV, our two critical projects, FRCV and FICV, are still far away. And coming back to Navy, of course, Navy has done some progress, but still our critical project P-75I and multi-role helicopters are still far away. So we'll start the debate now fundamentally, and we talk about, based on the Prime Minister message, are we seizing the momentum now? And this is the time. We start with the panelist Jayant Patil. He's a vice president, senior executive, and also whole-time board member. General Asthana is a veteran. He's a global security expert. Rajiv Mehrotra is a leading telecommunication legend. He has been there in the telecom world for a long time. A security expert is very important, and also he's a MD and founding director of Shyam and VNL Telecom. So start with Jayant Patil. Sir, tell me, how does Prime Minister message make a difference now in this scenario when COVID is there? Our defense budget is also seems to be faltering on the lower side. Could you start the debate now?
The Prime Minister's message, and in fact, just after the Prime Minister's message, we heard the Finance Minister come out with those 5 packages, and the 4th package actually had good amount of inputs on what would happen in defense. Now, what we actually see is there's a commitment to make in India a success. There's a specific budget being carved out for Indian programs, and there will be a negative list which those programs just cannot be imported. And that's exactly then would have to happen in the country. I see some of these have been under discussions as a part of some of the other policy papers, but somehow it had not got into an action. We actually see a physical action taking place now. We don't know when it physically gets issued because it has not yet been issued, but at the same time, as soon as that gets issued, one has to really see something which is significant, something that is major. And that's essentially where we await the last sort of a decision. There have been a lot of movement on the policy side, but of course, there's been not much of a movement on the Indian buying side. Last couple of years saw that nearly 70% we've been now buying from outside, and the ratio used to be exactly reverse. Although out of the 70% in India, we used to import quite sizably within that. And as a result, the ratio used to be overall 30-70 in favor of a foreigner. But today, the direct foreign programs themselves, right at the face value, are getting on about 65 to 70%. And only the balance is coming to Indian industry. So some of these new announcements actually sort of indicate that there will be money found. When is still a question mark. There will be programs which will not be imported. They will start happening within the country. And we await some of those announcements to really come in.
Thank you, Mr. Patil. Back to now, I would like to introduce a very distinguished panel, Chief Air Marshal, Vice Chief Shirish, a former Vice Chief of Indian Air Force, and also a very expert in the industry collaboration. Sir, what is the scenario now? Post Prime Minister message, do you see the change coming in building our capability in Make in India scenario now, or is just a rhetoric, or sort of a call for Make in India extended version?
It's certainly not rhetoric. In fact, I must compliment the government, Prime Minister particularly, who has turned an adverse situation to our advantage. Normally, this kind of reforms are very difficult to push under normal circumstances. There are lots of lobbies operating. There are people who are, who give very cogent and rational explanation as to why we must continue importing. But now there is really little money. A lot of money has to be invested. The country has not earned revenue. And this is one way of saving money and killing basically two birds in one stone. You are saving a lot of money. You are investing that money in your own country. You are giving freedom to your entrepreneurs here. Now, I was in uniform for quite some time now. I'm like Jayant, I'm also an entrepreneur. And I look at this as a golden opportunity. If we don't deliver now, it is not the government's fault. It's the fault of the industry. You look at the new DPP that has come in. Okay, earlier there were backdoor entries through JVs and through, saying that the intellectual capital is here, more than 60% IP is with us, and therefore it becomes Make in India. All those things have disappeared. Now there is a very distinct category of goods, that is Indian design and develop. And once this is done, then you will find that this backdoor entries for foreign companies through collaboration and JVs, that will also stop. And genuine development will take place here. And this new rule regarding, if something is being produced in India, you can't just import it. That rule has to be understood in its spirit. Tomorrow, let's say we are buying a missile, and Jayant in L&T decides that he has got the wherewithal to make a missile. And he puts his money where his mouth is, and he makes a missile, and it goes to the government and says, please test it. The government can't refuse to test. And if that missile passes the test, government can't refuse to buy. They can't buy that kind of a missile from anywhere else. Earlier, there were many loopholes. Earlier, the testing itself was such a convoluted process, particularly for the army, where you had to test at different locations and different time zones with different seasons. Okay, all that thing has been sorted out. And now it's an open field for us. And now we've got to prove our worth. We have to make complete systems here. We have to make sure that we identify each weapon, each system that is being imported, and see in what manner we can indigenize it. And this list which says that if that equipment is being made in India, it can't be imported, that list is only going to expand.
Air Marshal Shishir Dev, again, coming back to DPP.
My name is Shirish. My name is Shirish. Sorry to interrupt you. It's not Shishir.
No, I said Shirish. Okay, apology for that. So, Air Marshal Shirish Dev, you back to the DPP 2020. Every time I go to DPP, I get through 8 clauses and sub-clauses, IDDM. It looks, for me, it's alphabetical soup of an investment. It seems like a certificate. But there have been some changes, yes. For example, the Make Global provision. But even we talk about the FDI from 49% to 74%, there's a security clearance attached to that.
Yes.
And then the FDI has not materialized so far. And for the last 5 years, it's just about 1,800 crore of FDI we have received. How do you look at such contradictions?
It is more than me. Jayant should be able to explain. See, every company outside, they are worried about the bottom line. Okay, because you have made FDI 70% to expect people to come here and start investing. Okay, that will not work. It will work only in case it benefits them. Okay, so you have to see if that company is making its money by having a joint venture here. Yes, they will come and invest here. You don't have to sort of induce them to come here. You remove other bottlenecks like red tape, clearances, quick clearances. You do that, and that company not only that company who is investing here, they also want to know if the partner that you are having this JV with or collaboration with, that partner should not have too many difficulties. The difficulties can start from anything, from your pollution license. That will just not give you pollution license. The state government can cause a lot of problems to an entrepreneur for an FDA and for a JV. That we should make sure that while we are allowing 70% FDI, the other partner with whom they can start this JV, that partner is not troubled. Okay, that partner also has got ease of doing, improves his ease of doing business. And since I become an entrepreneur now, I've been going through all the rules, regulations. I find that the state government rules, they vary a lot from state to state. Okay, it's not only the capital expense of putting up a factory there, starting with your running expenses. Like electricity in Maharashtra is 7 rupees a unit. In Chhattisgarh, it is 3.5 rupees a unit. Okay, this kind of difficulties, that practical difficulties that an entrepreneur has, or that JV could have, those difficulties have to be resolved.
Right, Marshal. So again, back to Mr. Patil, then you are an industry champion, for the private sector, defense private sector. Then everybody talks about how do you look at such thing, in DPP 2020 with the Prime Minister focused so much on indigenization, and then these are the challenges. Why did we need another make global sub clause in the DPP just to add a certificate to the whole system? Why can't we make it simple, easy to understand for investor to come in and for a partner to engage with in our defense procurement system, which is already so much complex, 700 pages there. How do you look at? Please talk about.
Manish, those who understand the DPP well, for them it's quite easy. I must tell you, there was a buy global category, but I must also tell you that there have been more than a dozen programs under buy global which have been won by Indian companies. My company has been one which has at least won about 5 or 6 of those programs. Now, when an Indian company wins under buy global, how to deal with it? Or let's say a foreigner today decides to make it in India instead of making it in his country. How does he deal with it? And this is specifically some of the issues which, Marshal, they've actually talked about. Some of those get addressed in that particular category. So it's still a buy global, but make in India because of buy global. The biggest, I would say, success story, which is publicly visible out of this, is the K9 Vajra program, which Lassen Dubro is physically today building. We started with this program under Buy Global, but we are actually building the vehicles in India. And I must tell you, there's 80% indigenization which has already been done. Now, this is something which will only be facilitated if a process of this kind exists. I must tell you my experiences with this, when the category didn't exist. You have a Buy Global case, now you need an export license from that country. Now, I am an Indian company staying in India. Where do I get an export clearance? Because without export clearance, I can't get my advances. Now, where do I go for getting an export clearance? So processes and procedures, since they are very hard and fast in DPP, it needed an innovation over the existing process of Buy Global. And that's exactly where the category that fits in. Next point on this specific categories, this is something which I believe, if there are major programs which are going to be under that category, we see that Buy Global is today the last category of acquisition. Just before we are finally going to give an order to a foreign OEM, we are asking him under this category, which is like 7-1 category. We are saying, will you make it in India? Because making in India, as very rightly brought out by Marshal, is going to be much more inexpensive. And if you have a good partner who has the infrastructure, who has the wherewithal, which is what was the case in many of my programs, you then actually start building it within the country and you are able to pass on those benefits. Now, imagine a scenario of 100% import. You are subject to a foreign exchange variation, which is equivalent to 100% of value. Now, if I do 50, 60, 70 in India, that much of it is in rupee and it is in fixed and firm. There's no variation on that. So it's something which benefits the nation if it happens here. Next point on that, if it starts happening here, does the money stay with only the prime contractor? On this program, I have 1,400 industry partners in a tierized model. Now, all the 1,400 get business. And then there are 3 tiers of those within this 1,400 who get business. So the effective GDP creation which happens, my back of the envelope calculation would say it is in excess of 7 times. So if you have $1 billion program which is under some of these categories that is physically being produced in India, you have $7 billion of contribution to the GDP. And that's a game changer. And this is where some of the existing contracts where the success stories have come into existence, there was a need felt that if this can be done by Indian industry, why not have a specific, before we give it to a foreigner, which in any case is the last category and priority, why not ask him to do it here? That's exactly where the category fits in.
Right, agreed. General Asthana, he
Yeah.
has a 40 years of distinguished career in the Indian Army, and he takes our Indian perspective to across the world. But now back here to the fundamental, General Asthana, and of course,
Yeah.
one of the big ticket reform what we're expecting is the ordnance factory, board, and then it has been corporatized. First of all, what difference does it will make to our defense industry? And is it a significant steps? Because I think until unless efficiency is not increased, it's just a half-hearted reform within Ordnance Factory Board. How do you look at? Because I see even the small arms army at the moment, none of the arm. In fact, I don't find a single small arm is from Ordnance Factory at the moment now, apart from the AK-203, which is under the process, and 6S which have ordered, and carbines, Kakel, and all which we put together. How do you look at such situation? Because 41 factories, 11 research wing, and plus 9 what they call learning institute of Ordnance Factory Board. Are the taxpayer getting their money in terms of building defense capability? This is a question to you, General Asthana. How do you look at such situation now?
Okay, thank you for the question. And before I start, before I answer you, let me put few things in context. I heard both the panelists. DPP 2020 is still a draft. And therefore, all your suggestions can still be accommodated, and they need to be flagged and perhaps put it to the government. And I think there can be a review as far as it is not yet rolled out. Number two, COVID-19 has taught us one very good lesson, that you have to be self-reliant. And this is across the board. Even Americans, when they found that for minor things they were not self-reliant, they found a major problem. So self-reliance is very important. We were the second highest importers of defense industry. This is not a very good tag. I don't like this tag. And therefore, we just need to challenge our industry to come up and produce. Now I come to the corporatization and the question, specific question which you asked me. Firstly, the Ordnance Factory Board and these 41 ordnance factories, they have been enjoying the protectionist status. They have not been delivering efficiently, and the excuses which they had been giving are something like, okay, in war, what will happen? I am there for war. Secondly, my overheads are there, and things of that sort. But today, with the corporatization, firstly, it is not privatization, it is not being sold out. In corporatization, what it means is that they will be accountable, they will have more autonomy, but they will be made accountable. They will be something like a PSU, and they will have to deliver. And when it comes to testing, when it comes to they will have to compete with the other corporate industries. Now, that is very important, because earlier we have been talking a lot about giving level playing field to the industry. But the fact that they were part of Ministry of Defense, obviously it was not a level playing field. So this had to be done. And I appreciate that there is going to be fair amount of opposition in terms of the labor reforms, because they have gone on a strike against this proposition. But the fact is, whether strike or not, we have to do this change, and we have to be competitive. And unless we are competitive, there have been n number of examples. In fact, I was telling Manish the other day, when we had Ordnance Factory Board meeting in my directorate when I was DG Infantry at some point of time, I produced one jersey being sold in Gopinath Bazaar for half the cost for DGOF was charging. And similar jersey for Air Force and Navy was different. Now, as India, for all the items which are dual-use items, there is no question of having standing manpower. Where is the question of affording people for 60 years of age and then looking at their pension and things like that? And we are not leaving those people at lurch. 5 years, I think the government has agreed to give them to fund it. And subsequently, also they are earmarking some kind of capital for making sure that they can sustain themselves. So corporatization was an essential step. It is an important step. And I think it will bring everybody on a level playing field. And as users, we were also used to crib that we are getting substandard material and at a much higher cost. And therefore our defense budget is also suffering. So considering all these facts, I think these are I totally agree what the government is doing. Corporatization was certainly a requirement, and it was not only thought of today. I was also part of one of the reforms under General Shamsher Mehta for the logistics, and in that also we had asked and written in no uncertain terms that we need corporatization of the base workshops. Imagine we had 10% EME, the highest technical qualified manpower in the world, the second highest after railways. And our Vijayant tank, Jagga will bear with me, passed out without upgradation. Now, how can such a manpower be wasted like that? We can't afford it. And therefore, all these measures which have been announced, I think I welcome all these measures, and hopefully there will be a much this thing. I'll stop here and take my turn later. For next
Right. So great, General Asthana, and back to our 13 lakh strong Indian Army, Lieutenant General R.K. Jagga, who is just recently, he was helm of the affair of DGMF, a very key wing within Indian Army, which is about the Director General Mechanized Forces. One of the key critical two projects which is hanging, as far as I know, for a couple of years, and which is so definitive towards the Indian Army. I don't think that this decade, apart from Kenya and Vajra, a bit Larsen and Toubro and South Korean collaboration, there has been any major acquisition or development capability build up within the Indian Army. How do you look at such situation, Lieutenant General R.K. Jagga? Question to you: how does Indian Army build a capability while our adversary Chinese have made the gap much wider in terms of technology?
Good evening to everybody. I've heard, all three speakers so far. As far as the gap between India and China is concerned, it's well known. Their economy has been growing at a very, very fast rate. They have used, I would say, they have leveraged themselves very well. When they imported from Russia or from any other country, they've used their, I would say, the intelligence also. They've gone for reverse engineering. So I think we should be, I would like to get into why the technological gap between India and China is there, because all of us know why it is there. I think what is more important for us is why we have not progressed.
Yeah, it is a perspective I put it to you, of course.
Self-reliance. And like, General Asthana was also talking, and Marshal, Mr. Patil has been very, very positive. The biggest problem is that Ministry of Defense, can it give a level playing field to private industry? My question is that, all these DDPs we've seen from 2003 onwards to 2020. What we want to see, what is the fine print? The DPSUs, we may say anything, they are part of Ministry of Defense. Ordnance Factory, they are part of Ministry of Defense. DRDO, part of Ministry of Defense. So it's like my own child. I will always look towards them more than the private industry. So that is the first part. We have to give level playing field. So should they be part of the Ministry of Defense? That's one more question we have to look into. DRDO is doing its own R&D. Ordnance Factory is doing its separate R&D. The left doesn't know what the right is doing. We have to collaborate, be it private industry along with all these three. Look, whatever we may talk about ordnance factories, corporatization may happen, will happen, but how it's going to happen? Will those corporate board be allowed to close the factories which are loss making? We are buying Ashok Leyland. From Ashok Leyland, there's somebody assembling it within India. Is it the right thing to do? The cost is going up. So these are the issues which I think the government has to address. And that's what I'm saying, the fine print on how it is going to be implemented. That is the mute point. Indian industry has got the capability. If they don't have the capability, they'll get it from abroad. They will reverse engineer. But they should be sure that there will be somebody who will buy it. It shouldn't happen that they've prepared something, they've made a component, they've made something which they can bring it to the Indian Armed Forces, and it gets caught in the red tape.
But Lieutenant General Jagga, just to interrupt you, then why the half-hearted reform within Ordnance Factory Board? With all those 41, 11, and 9 organization, huge capital bank, huge land bank. Why are we not using it now when we have the resources crunch? We have the COVID scenario. This reform is. How do you look at such reform? You think there is a progress?
Manish, I would just say that like Marshal, this is the right time. The government has actually taken steps because of COVID-19. Otherwise, probably these measures would have come a little late. It's politics. It's power centers. We all know it. Nobody wants to leave the powers. There are huge interests involved. And I'm sure the government knows it. The people who want to make a difference, who want to bring a change, they also know it. So I'm sure if all like-minded people, right kind of people who want to make India self-reliant, if all of us get together, I see no reason. It'll be slow.
Right.
I can assure you. Slow.
Right. So, General Danga, if you talk specific to the FICV, the Future Infantry Combat Vehicle Program, which is so critical, and we talk to absolutely to make it an indigenization. That's word is often used. Where we are now at the moment, you had been the helm of affair until very recently, and also there's a huge contradiction in FRCV, which come back to the later. First an FICV and Make in India concept on that.
As far as FICV is concerned, I think it kept changing because of the change in DPPs. Initially, it was Make One. We worked on it for not many years. A lot of hard work was put in, I would say, by the DGMF forces, my hierarchy at that time, and also the Ministry of Defense. But as we moved in and DPP 2016 came, so there was a change in thought process that should be going for Make 2. After all, there's so much of money involved, and the number of players increased. The moment it was that people can go who are not being selected, everybody gets to know everything. You may say that everything is confidential and secret. So there were people who said, why you want to go in for Make 1, we are ready to do Make 2. So all these, things started happening, and it was decided that let's go in for Make 2. And I would say, yes, it's a slow process. It's a slow progress, but FICV will happen. And I personally feel that Indian defense industry is capable of making it. Yes, they will have to take support from some foreign collaborator, but FICV will happen. And as I see it today, having seen DPP 2020 also, I think our target was 2023-24. Probably it will get delayed to 2026 like it happens. But FICV will happen, and I love to see it happening with more indigenous content.
We will continue these things, and we'll come back to FRCV. Now to our Air Marshal Shirish. I hope I pronounced you correctly now.
Wrong again. It's Shirish.
Shirish, okay. That's it. Is it a Zoom problem? Perhaps the Chinese software is not working anywhere. Air Marshal, back to the Indian Air Force.
Yes.
Situation is well aware that we are back to 30 squadron, and Chief Rakesh Bhaduria has recently announced 450 aircraft that's required. And look at the Tejas 40, which we have ordered now. I don't know, this situation is we have not reached until the Mark 20, and LCA Tejas Mark 1A, which is if gets through 83, it will be inducted in 2025. Rafale and a 114 MMRC-2A. How do you look at the situation now, and especially Make in India in Air Force? Because always when we talk about Air Force, they said they're import-driven, import-lover, and it is time to change the perspective. Is it a hard talk for you?
No, we are really not import lovers. Okay, it is just that there is HAL, which is single entity, which can only do so much, and you require some basic assets. Otherwise, Air Force is totally into indigenization. In fact, I must tell you that the person who has the most at stake personally is Rakesh Bhaduria, Air Chief Marshal Rakesh Bhaduria, because he is the one who has seen LCA through. He was a member of NFTC. He was leading NFTC that developed the LCA. And I must tell you that LCA is a very capable aircraft. And it's only up to HAL to make sure that their engineering is good. That what we often forget is that in India, our engineering is very poor. If I want a particular nozzle for a jet engine, I have to import it from outside. If I want a harmonic gear, there is nobody else who will make a harmonic gear. I want a particular ball screw, there may be only one or chef who can make that ball screw in India. Okay, so if you see in Germany, if you see in Japan, and Germany particularly, the economy is propped up by Mittelstand. The Mittelstand is the middle level. Factories that are small, that are making niche parts, and they're making them perfectly. In India, that ecosystem is yet to come up. Companies like L&T are doing a great deal to make sure that this ecosystem comes up. This vendor base must be developed generously, and the ministry must support it. Then your LC will become good. HAL is trying to squeeze the vendors. You just speak to the vendors who deal with HAL. Okay, and that story is not very good. We need to rescript that plot and get HAL to focus on hardcore engineering. Okay, I was so pleasantly surprised when I flew Tejas. Before flying the Tejas, I had wrong ideas about the Tejas. It is such a sweet aircraft and such a capable aircraft. When you're in the cockpit, you as a pilot, okay, it's a totally pilot's aircraft. It's got great systems. Okay, but then when you're doing the walk around, you'll see signs of poor engineering. That is HAL's fault. HAL must rectify that. Unless you rectify that, you can't be a good aviation manufacturer. Then second thing that I feel about Tejas is that manufacturing. Tejas can be manufactured quickly. Okay, a company like L&T, if you give them a big contract and you tell them that 60% of the Tejas, particularly airframe, is to be manufactured very quickly, I'm sure they will step up to it. Okay, look at the Tatas. We're doing it for other countries. We're making a Chinook airframe here. What is the problem with the Tejas airframe? What is the problem with the composite airframe? Look at, I have happened to see Jayant's composite facility. Okay, it's state of the art. Okay, you look at my composite facility. My composite facility, I'm a small startup, but still it's state of the art. So there is nothing that we can't do.
Right, I'm aware of Tejas composite material is one of the high benchmark
yes.
And make it very lightweight.
Yes, not only that, don't forget the fly-by-wire system. Okay, we keep cursing DRDO, we keep saying that the DRDO doesn't do things well, but what we have done on the Tejas fly-by-wire system, it is such a sweet system and not a single problem with that system. Okay, when the Gripen was being made, Gripen crashed twice before that fly-by-wire system could be, tweaked and made safe. Okay, there's not a single incident on Tejas.
But agree, Air Marshal, but still less than 20 FOC standard Tejas
yeah,
so far.
I agree with you that there has been a delay in FOC. Okay, I agree with you. And a lot of that delay, from what I know on the ground, is because of, very, very, very small, trivial reasons. Something, this is not available, that is not available, the trolley is not there, some people have been posted out, some people are coming here. Okay, so HAL needs to step up to it. And HAL has to be asked, no excuses, just make sure that the aircraft are delivered.
So I understand HAL is the same position as we have in DRDO, the single agency responsible for creating ecosystem. You talked about ecosystem, everybody talks about ecosystem. I know aircraft, manufacturing aircraft of even a medium weight is a complex. We just joined by our the Editor-in-Chief and the Chairman, Dr. Annurag Batra. Welcome, sir. Welcome to the discussion. While we continue. On this,
I'd stay on mute. I just want to listen.
So back to Ed Marshal Deo. And then we talk about some of the fundamental question now. Recently, CDS talked about we will not import. We'll focus everything in Make in India, especially and that reference also given to MMRC 2A114. At the same time, Chief has talked about international collaboration. What is ambiguity so far? Why can't we address?
There are many options, Manish. There are many options. Okay, there are many options where.
Sir, let me complete the point. If you say around the world, for example, we have a Tempest program. We have a program with Japan, which is building, next generation. Why can't we collaborate internationally, fast track the process while we need our squadron, our capability to build up fast? Why are we so slow on that so far?
No, absolutely. What you're saying is absolutely logical. Turkey is doing it. Japan is doing it. Even European countries collaborate with each other to, distribute the load and make sure that the program moves fast. And that is one of the things that is very much open to everybody. Okay, it is part of the new DPP, the draft that is coming up. And MMRC also, there are many options. You could have Tejas Mark II with help from some other people, okay, where you incorporate some stealth technology, you give it the MMRC performance, and you manufacture it in India. Okay, so you could have a program of say F-21, part of it F-21, part of it commitment to develop Tejas 2. So there are many things that are possible now. Now we are not height bound. Okay, now the economy is driving us towards a point where we have no choice but to be practical and logical. Okay, there is, and I see this with the government. I've seen this government now for almost 8 years. Okay, and I see a distinct difference. Things are being done. Okay, and everybody should be very happy. Particularly the entrepreneurs must be very happy. Okay, I also must tell you, I just one small point to make about what was said by, earlier by the Army Generals, Jagga. There is a model that is already existing for OFB corporatization. Okay, that model is MSME model. Okay, MSME we have got Indo-German tool rooms. Okay, which are the model is like this: that MSME ministry they give them all the capital requirements like machines and land and stuff like that. They have to make their own money. Right. They make their own money. They're doing great business. They're competitors to L&T. If today ISRO wants to get actuators made, they go to Bhubaneswar IGTR. Tomorrow, today Bharat Forge wants to make impellers. They go to Aurangabad IGTR. They are fully loaded. The machines are fully loaded. They are making money and they're earning their own money. That is what we must do for OFB. OFBs, they got all the resources now. Compete, earn your own money, pay your own people. That's what they must do.
Yes, to Mr. Patil, of course, you have been, your voices, your remarks towards defense policies are taken very seriously up to the Prime Minister level. And here, Prime Minister has announced a special budget for the Indian defense manufacturing. And what is all about? Could you highlight, is it a substantial change or just a DPP 2020 draft proposition sort of something?
No, I think it's going far beyond the DPP 2020. DPP 2020, and very rightly brought out by General Asthana, is still a document which is open for commenting. The last date, although it's just about over, notwithstanding if there's something which is absolutely pressing, we are all clear that we still can make someone listen. And that's an openness in the ministry, which I would say, today is completely feasible, possible, which I would say just about a couple of years back, that was not the case. So there's a lot of movement. Specific to what you said about the size of the pie, to my mind, it cannot be something which is minor. And the indications obviously are what we are getting is it's going to be quite sizable. And obviously, till the time the numbers as well as the programs are not specifically talked about. But I must tell you, there is one very important policy document which generally is missed out in varieties of these kind of discussions. In 2018, there was a defense production policy, which again was a draft, never approved and never announced because it possibly had to go to cabinet and it never went because thereafter the elections came in. This is one document which says there are 13 to 15 types of platforms, and I differentiate between an equipment and a system and a platform. We talk Marshal, they've talked so much about the aircraft. Now, how about not importing any aircraft? There has to be some date. So this is one policy which says after XYZ years, and which for the government to actually say that after that I will not, and at that point in time, these 14 platforms were put at 2026. Beyond that, none of these will be allowed to be imported. Now, what all was in it? There was a fighter in it. There was a helicopter in it. There's warships in it. There are submarines in it. There are communication systems in it. Now, what is that which obviously we are importing today? And to top it up, when the Prime Minister talks about and he reviews and then gives a direction that why Make in India has not happened. I think Make in India fundamentally has not happened simply because of money being throttled. And I'll be extremely blunt on this part. 2016 onwards, if we really see, 2017, some more tax reforms came. 2016 onward, there have been taxes on imports. Now, instead of removing a tax for somebody or adding a tax to somebody, everybody was added into a tax bracket without realizing that it is going to make your budget shrink by 25%. And I can prove this number by calculations. There's a same budget which the ministry has been getting, but now physical expendable amount simply shrank by 25%. One, GST, second, the import taxes. Do some small sums and you know it's going to be 25%. Now the budget allocation never went up. So obviously, if previously you could buy 100 and now you can buy 75 to 80 somewhere in between, the problem would be first money will go on to your committed liabilities. And that's exactly what one has been listening, that the committed liabilities take away almost all the money. There's nothing left for new orders.
Right.
So that's essentially where the root of the problem was. This is one time which the Prime Minister actually has committed. There will be a fund created.
Right.
What size it should be? I wouldn't say anything less than 1,00,000 crore makes any sense.
Right.
And 1,00,000 crore in terms of orders or 2,00,000 crores in terms of orders will only mean per year spend of nothing more than 20-25,000 crore, which to my mind is something which is manageable. The fuel saving this year alone, and we just before we went live, we were talking about it. The fuel saving alone is going to be in excess of 3 lakh crores. So there's a small pie out of that. If it is diverted for these kind of nationalist kind of policy and reallocations are made, the country will be completely somewhere else within, let's say, literally 3 years' time.
Right.
And that's what one is expecting.
Right. Mr. Patil, you made a very fundamental points. Now, with the distinguished panelists, a shift towards the telecom, I say it's also a part of the key defense ecosystem of our country. To Rajiv Mehrotra, he's a MD and a founder of Shyam Telecom. Like you, he's a legend in the telecommunication world. It is equally important, the security, the telecommunication, the reconnaissance. I think it's a very fundamental part of the defense ecosystem. To Rajiv Mehrotra, I'll ask you, of course, straight away, the overall debate, how you see during the post-COVID and even before COVID, scenario. We talk about, let's take the case of Huawei and 5G technology in India. The discussion has again come back to the same, we should not allow Huawei to integrate in our 5G technology. How do you look at such, and plus government has very open about that, Huawei being part of the ecosystem. Huawei has been the part of ecosystem as well. How do you look at such military and security aspect and Huawei coming into the picture? Because I think in the technology, they are the cheapest if you compare to other European, or for the matter even Nokia, what they makes it. So it's a straight question to you, and how challenging it is the scenario now.
आपने बहुत सारे सवाल पूछ लिए, and incidentally we are using Zoom. तो एक तो हमें differentiate नहीं करना चाहिए और discriminate नहीं करना चाहिए, whether it is Huawei और Ericsson and Nokia. ये नहीं है कि एक से दुश्मनी और बाकी आपके भाई लगते हैं, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. जब तक आप खुद नहीं होंगे तब तक कुछ नहीं हो सकता. Using a gun of your enemy is not a problem because it is your finger on the trigger. But using the telecom and ICT systems of anybody for that matter, it's not. I mean, we all talk of security.
But Mr. Mehrotra, telecommunication is the heart of our security. Military uses, government uses that.
I'm coming there only. You don't share. I mean, none of us share our phones with our spouses because it has our heart and brain both. So telecom system XYZ किसी का भी हो वो डेंजरस है, हमारा ही होना चाहिए. और एक चीज जो कि कॉमन है, and I have certain points to make, if you permit me.
Of course, please go ahead.
एक सबके दिमाग में ये कीड़ा घुसा हुआ है कि we want the best, we want good. Best is the enemy of good. और बेस्ट की वजह से ही डिफेंस सर्विसेज फोर्सेस को इतनी नुकसान हो रहा है. And they buy something at 3 or 4 times the cost because they are just crazy about the best. And there is this status quo and foreign. आप जितनी भी बात होती है उन सब में आप दो चीजें, एक चीज ओपन है, दूसरी उसके पीछे है छुपी हुई. And that's why we are in this situation कि सबको फॉरेन से बड़ा लगाव है. बायर जो है उसको, with all due respect to the द डिफेंस पीपल हियर, उनको फॉरेन में सारा इंटरेस्ट आएगा। और जिम्मेवारी तो आर्मी की, नेवी, एयरफोर्स की थी कि अपना डेवलप करवाते, वो तो इन्होंने करा नहीं। स्पेसिफिकेशन ये वो बनाते हैं जो कि हो नहीं सकते, स्पेसिफिकेशन ये डिस्कस नहीं करते, पब्लिश नहीं करते, इंडियन इंडस्ट्री के संग बैठ के नहीं बनाते, और बाद में हर चीज के लिए कहते हैं कि जब फील्ड में टेस्ट कर लेंगे। भाई फील्ड में तो आप मैनिपुलेट करोगे, और ये इसमें कोई छुपाने की बात नहीं है, इससे रियलिटी है। तो एंड देन द बिहाइंड दैट इज ए ग्रुप विच वांट्स के स्टेटस को शुड बी मेंटेन, क्योंकि उनकी रोजी रोटी उससे चलती है, उस स्टेटस को से, चाहे वो ऑर्डिनेंस फैक्ट्री है या कोई और है, या पीएसयू है, डिफेंस पीएसयू। डिफेंस पीएसयू जो माल आर्मी को देती है, डिफेंस को देती है, वो जो कमर्शियली हम लोग दे सकते हैं उससे बहुत बेटर वो दुगनी ढाई गुनी कीमत पे देती है, और टाइम भी 3 गुना लेती है। और उसके बाद लेती क्या है, वो भी सामान सारा बाहर से इंपोर्ट करती है। एंड लाइव एग्जांपल है कि एयरपोर्ट की जो एयरफील्ड की जो दी गई थी पेरीमीटर इंट्रूजन का सिस्टम, वो बेल को दे दिया गया भाई नॉमिनेशन, उन्होंने 2.5 गुनी कीमत में काम किया, वो भी 3 साल के बाद, और सारा इंपोर्टेड है, उसमें सिर्फ उनका एनएमएस उनका है। तो हम किसकी इंडस्ट्री चला रहे हैं, किसका चला रहे हैं? देन एक सिचुएशन है बहुत बड़ा कि इंडिजिनस का नाम लिया जाता है। बड़ी सिंपल सी पॉलिसी होनी चाहिए। आईडीडीएम में 6 कैटेगरी बना रखी है, 500 पेज है, कोई आदमी उसको समझ नहीं सकता जो कोई काम करना चाहे। अब जो आईडीडीएम डीपीपी 2020 है, हमारा सजेशन है उसमें सिर्फ 2 होनी चाहिए कैटेगरी, एक जो कि इंडियन किसी ने बनाई है, या दूसरी कोई बाहर से करके कर रहा है। जब आप 6 कैटेगरी देखते हैं, यू लुक एट दिस, इट्स नॉट ए सस्पिशन, इट्स अ फैक्ट कि यार किसी को, हर एक किसी ने सोचा मैं इसको यहाँ एडजस्ट कर दूंगा, इसको यहाँ एडजस्ट कर दूंगा। यार कोई 6 कैटेगरी थोड़ी होती है, सिक्के के 2 पहलू होते हैं। मतलब इस 6 कैटेगरी ऑफ डीपीपी अभी आपको कभी रिजल्ट नहीं मिले, ना मिलेंगे। और अगर आप देखें कोई बड़ा प्रिक्योरमेंट भी नहीं होगा। क्यों नहीं होगा? क्योंकि जो भी कोई देखता है ना, वो कहता है ये है क्या, कोई करके एक जगह चला जाएगा, दूसरी जगह से पास हो जाएगा, तीसरी जगह से, चौथी जगह जाके रुक जाएगा वो, क्योंकि डजंट मेक सेंस। FICB की बात करी और सबकी, एक बात इसको बुरा मत मानिएगा, ये फैक्ट ऑफ लाइफ है। आर पार की लड़ाई तो कभी होगी नहीं, मुश्किल से होगी तो 4-5 किलोमीटर तक जाने की। और अगर आप ग्लोबली देखें तो कोई नया टैंक नहीं बना रहा, रशिया ने जो करा टैंक FICB कितने चाहिए, क्या चाहिए, रिक्वायरमेंट है प्रेसिजन एम्यूनिशन की, लॉइटरिंग एम्यूनिशन की, टारगेटेड लॉन्ग रेंज मिसाइल जो कि कर रहे हैं। लॉइटरिंग एम्यूनिशन हम नहीं बना रहे हैं प्रेसिजन स्ट्राइक के लिए। परेशानी जो है, जो सारा थिएटर है वो रह गया है मुश्किल से 2-2.5 किलोमीटर रेडियस का। एंड वी हैव गिवन इट अ नेम, लिलैक। लिलैक स्टैंड्स फॉर लो इंटेंसिटी लोकल एरिया कॉन्फ्लिक्ट, दैट्स व्हाट वी आर सफरिंग। तो उसमें जो कमांडर बैठा है उसको अपने 4-5 किलोमीटर रेडियस के अंदर सब कुछ चाहिए। ही नीड्स सर्विलेंस चाहिए, उसको इंटेलिजेंस चाहिए, रिकॉयनेंस चाहिए, उसको उस तरीके के टूल चाहिए, उस तरीके का कम्युनिकेशन सिस्टम चाहिए, एंड सारी डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड चीज है। एंड 99% ऑफ द वार नाउडेज इज ऑफ इंटेलिजेंस वार। साइबर की वार है, रेडियो वेव्स की वार है। इफ वी डू नॉट हैव दैट एंड वी कीप ऑन इन्वेस्टिंग इन बिग प्लेटफॉर्म्स एंड अदर थिंग्स, वो होगी नहीं चीज, वो होना ही नहीं है, कोई टैंक नहीं चलेगा। और another thing which we have noticed, and this is a pain, the army, I'm saying army because a lot of interaction we had with them, 21वीं शताब्दी में 20वीं शताब्दी के स्पेसिफिकेशन वो कहते हैं बैकवर्ड इंटीग्रेशन होना चाहिए।
राइट।
मतलब हम कर क्या रहे हैं, इट कॉस्ट यू 3 times the cost to make an equipment which should be backward compatible,
right,
and it is much cheaper. Now I'll come to telecommunication and ICT के ऊपर, and mainly communication and ISR. All our telecom equipment is either from one defense PSU or from second one, which are again totally imported. The only they put their sticker on that. There was this program, it's still a program, software defined radio, and they want to make a standards which Americans are using. They say we want SCA. SCA तो यार अमेरिकन सिस्टम है, आप अपना करो ना।
Mr. Rajiv, Mr. Rajiv, of course, you made a very point. Just, I'll interrupt you for a while. I would like to again introduce our chairman and editor-in-chief, Dr. Annurag Batra. He's like defense for him. He feels like he's not been a
No,
part
I'm
of
a student. Manish,
but
don't build me up. I am a student. I don't know enough. Okay, first let me. Unfortunately, I couldn't listen to the whole piece because I've been attending other initiatives that we're doing. But of course, I understand about business economy, entrepreneurship, and a bit about defense. I'm not a deep domain expert or a player like you. I also want to bring in an expert who understands public policy, and someone I have to bring. Mr. Siddharth Zarabi, he's our guest editor today. He's a policy expert. He's a senior editor and journalist. Can we also have Mr. Zarabi on screen?
Thank you so much, Dr. Batra. And
so, Mr. Zarabi, why don't you ask a question? I only want to ask one question. Is that, will you see in the short term and the medium term this policy actually getting implemented? So will you actually see investments in Indian defense in the next 6 months actualizing? That's my only question, because execution and implementation is everything. Policy is great. And Mr. Zarabi, you wanted to ask a question. This is an area you follow a lot.
I think that is a very good point that you have raised, because if we use 2014 as a cutoff year and do a total tally of the FDI that has come into Indian defense on a greenfield or even a brownfield basis, minus the Rafale acquisition, which is a government-to-government deal, and there are certain spin-offs that are arising out of it, offsets, you will see that the number has not responded to this government's consistent attempts to get foreign direct investment. We must give credit to the current government in the previous tenure and the most latest move where FDI has been allowed in, but it is not translating into action. And therefore, my question is to Mr. Mehrotra on the panel. And I would also like to then get Mr. Patil to also answer that question, because I have heard him speak in the past as well. So I'll start with you, Mr. Mehrotra, very briefly. Whenever we speak to private companies interested in the defense space, they always say that there are no orders, or that the qualification criteria and the processes for getting large orders are extremely difficult still. When we speak to government, they say private sector companies do not have the competence and technology. What is the truth? Can you tell us?
And just, Siddharth, just to build on what you said, Manish in July or August wrote a cover for us on defense, and it became the discussion of the defense, private sector defense CEO through FICCI went to meet the Defense Minister Rajnath Singh ji, and his cover story became where the payments are stuck. Whatever buying also happened, the money hasn't come in. Now, if that doesn't get the economic cycle to go, so just wanted to add to what you said.
Yes, to Mr. Rajiv Mehrotra to answer, please. Yes, and then to Mr. Patil. To Mr. Mehrotra, please.
I'll stick to only telecom and wireless communication and broadband communication for army and intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, which is connected again with wireless and other things and cameras and unattended ground sensors and all these things. Everything is with us. We don't have orders, number one. Number two, whoever says that Indian companies don't have that technology or specification, they themselves don't know what they're buying. And from where they are buying? They're buying small orders, 40, 50 crore. They are buying from people who are supposed to command, who are supplying them milk and others. So this is what is going on this side. This is the ground reality. And these are all, maybe some of them are Chinese or from other countries. So there is no standardization, no specification written by army. They must write, you must standardize. And again, 30 years ago, everything first came into defense, then came into civil. From last 15, 20 years, it is the civil which is driving the defense. Telecommunication system, the companies who are in telecom outside of India, who were in army communication, they are living in 20th century. They don't know.
Right.
So specifications, two things. Specifications and standardization is required, open, and they should discuss with the Indian industry. And Indian industry means those whose headquarters is here, global headquarters is here, and who own the technology. Asking some people who are in business, they just want that they want to be in defense, so they want to invest. They have zero technology, zero domain knowledge. They have not invested in R&D. They want to get into that field. Obviously, they look for some foreign partner. This is the issue.
Mr. Patil, as I come to you, I just want to add one small point, sir. 2.5 months back, on the 25th of March, Government of India issued a press release, and that was not on defense, it was on our preparation for COVID, and there was a line in which I will never forget in my life. I will repeat it for our entire audience and this esteemed panel. It said that as of 25th March, no PPE equipment or masks were being manufactured in India. This is 25th of March 2020 and not 25th of March 1900. Since then, we have become one of the largest PPE manufacturers in the world because we used our private sector capacity and their ability to turn around things very fast to deliver PPEs. Can such a similar thing ever be possible in defense? And I ask you this because had a war broken out, the Chinese are trying their level best to provoke us in Ladakh. Pakistan is continuing to provoke us in Kashmir. Suppose a war had broken out, God forbid. Supply lines globally were disrupted. Where would we have got key equipment, key parts, replacement parts from, unless we had a domestic industry? My question is, can we do the same thing that we did with PPE to textile private sector companies? Can such a thing ever be possible in India?
You said it very right. 25th, in fact, I had spoken to the defense minister, and then we had some of the industry interactions which actually began. And that's exactly what was the status as of that day. There's been so much which has happened, I must tell you, within exactly 9 weeks. And today we are producing few lakhs of them every day. And that's a kind of a scenario. Yesterday we had Rajnath ji on another meeting, and he actually made a statement. We don't only can support ourselves, but we can export it now.
Yes.
So that's exactly a change. How did this game change happen? This game change happened because we knew there are indigenous technologies which are available. We only found that there's somebody who makes a cloth, but somebody who makes actually an equipment. The cloth guy doesn't know who requires it. He exports it. The guy who is actually doing it in this country doesn't know where to buy a cloth. Now, bringing the people together was all that a platform was needed. And this is something which, as Society of Indian Defense Manufacturers, which is no profit, no loss kind of an organization, we said we'll facilitate. We went to DRDO. We said to Chairman DRDO that is everything that you have done. And we essentially have N99 mask, not N95. We have an N99 because every of these technologies which DRDO had developed was essentially for the purpose of a, let's say, a biological or nuclear holocaust.
NBC.
So you actually have an NBC capability fully. Now you don't need an NBC capability, the N aspect of it, but the chemical aspect or a biological aspect you do need. So these only needed tweaking, and technologies, I must tell you, a simple request and an immediate response from government saying it will be given free to whosoever who wants. Now, next case was if I make a few, let's say 100 numbers, somebody must certify it. So immediate next certification agencies, which under DRDO were energized and certification started happening. The moment that happened, you need an immediate first market. Indian Army actually came forward, and within exactly 10 days, 257 crore worth of orders were placed as a launching. You need a launch customer. All of us, Marshal, they will agree with me. What is an importance in business of a launch customer? Now you have a launch customer, you know, exactly in 3 weeks time, 80% of that requirement was delivered. Now, we don't have to look for some amazing success stories to the ages of World War II, what US did, or for that matter, what UK did, or what Germany did, or what others did. We have some amazing success stories in India. It's only that we only have been, generally set of people who only celebrate failures and comment about failures. We don't celebrate
Absolutely.
successes.
Yeah.
And it's truly required to be publicized to that extent that this is a success which Indian industry can do. And I must tell you, there's not too many big players there. Bulk of them are small industries who truly made that kind of a revolution possible. All that they needed was some amount of hand-holding, putting them through a non-profit organization who said, here's a technology, here's a testing organization, here's something which XYZ makes. And within that ecosystem, you only had to energize an ecosystem and you see a success story. Let me go back to the other question which you essentially asked about 74% and what will really happen. To my mind, very simple scenario, anyone who is in business, it's not necessarily that we have to talk of an Indian or a foreigner, anybody who is in business, why will he invest? Fundamental question would be, if I have to make an investment, do I have a long-term sustained business case, which is all that will essentially make me or provoke me to make a new investment? That's a model which Indian buying system just does not allow. So whether we talk of 26, whether we talk of 49, whether we make it 74, and I must tell you, the second step of that 49 was up to 100 by making a specific application, and government simplified it, I must tell you, so much.
Yes.
They said Secretary Defense Production will clear it, none other than Secretary Defense Production. So man who needs is, and the one who is supposed to be in charge of production, he will clear your proposal. Zero proposals came.
Yes.
The reason for that is, where is the business case?
Yes.
And if there is no business case, there would be no investment.
So
Even
Mr. Patil, what I want to know is, do you think this upping of the limit in the next 3 to 6 months brings some money? How much?
Good question, Dr. Batra. And I must tell you, I have been on record on this, that I still see some successes of 74 simply because there will be industry who will move out of China. And they will notice this. They will notice that you are a nation which actually did a tax reform. You are a nation which simplified your taxes. Direct taxes have been cut, dramatically cut. If you are going to bring in fresh investment, it's only 15% bracket. It's half of what it was just before that date in October, November. So people will now want to move in, notwithstanding that India is going to order or not. The case in the past was India had to order because we are not allowing free exports. So exports policy happened. Now today, it doesn't have to be, my business case doesn't depend on whether India alone is buying. It depends on whether I can sell in India as well as outside. And that's essentially where this 74 I see some early bird successes, which essentially will mean somebody who wants to move in will get facilitated. And he will dramatically benefit. If those, we always say the early bird gets a worm. So the early birds only will get a worm. Thereafter, it will start getting tightened and tightened, because the security policy, and no country which has a defense industry would allow somebody a free walk-in. There would be enough amount of checks and balances, and we know they exist. And those they exist will certainly be exercised. And that's essentially where the flow of money, flow of decision making, that's something which has been made on a fast track. Thereafter, of course, the business cases will decide how much and where.
Right. So thank you, Mr. Batra. I think
Manish,
yes.
30-second intervention. One quick one that I want to make. Please allow me.
Yeah, please go ahead, because we are towards running short of time. We have to close it, and our last, but the best question still remains. Please go ahead.
I just want to point out to all our viewers that there, around 2 or 3 years back, I once did an interview with Mr. Mehrotra, who is on this panel, where he gave me a market cap comparison between the market cap then of Saab, and we were at that point of time deciding our aircraft purchase. And I figured that for the amount that you would spend on purchasing a few dozen aircraft, you could have purchased Saab 10 times over. It was
Right,
just
right.
one intervention.
I take your point, Mr. Jarabi, but the best and the most critical question remains still. I would like to point out to all the panelists, we talk about the capability. Mr. Rajiv Mehrotra will come back to this question again, but this is to all of you. Every time we talk about capability, we talk where it will come from. It will come out from defense R&D. That's, we have only one agency called DRDO. Let me point it out. We have out of the whole budget just about 19,000 crore, which makes it just 6% of the total defense budget. Out of the 6%, 3% goes in the salary and the maintenance of the infrastructure, the DRDO, all spread across India. With just 3%, can we make a difference to our capability? And this is the question we're asking all the panelists. Let me also tell you, we have to compete with our China. We have to compete with the best. That's how we can, at least our adversary next door. China has been spending consistently from 15 to 20% in the R&D, and that is how you develop your own capability, your own advancement, your own technology. To Mr. Patil, what is your take on this? How should we have a mission? How we come back and focus on this aspect?
Manish, you just asked a question which is so dear to my heart. I have been investing in this sector not today, for 35 years. And while Asthana can today design and build warships, design and build submarines to a battle tank, the FICV incidentally in my case in 2010 was indigenously designed and indigenously engineered. I may buy an engine because for few numbers of tanks, I will not be designing an engine, but I will buy an engine. So what? Engine only will become 15-20% of the cost. And that's essentially where, without R&D, I agree, it will just not happen. Now, over 35 years, when you invest, you become a partner to so many, because DRDO and Larsen & Toubro's relationship as a result, so is with every other strategic sector, goes to 50 years and onwards. There's 60 years of relationship with the nuclear technologies, 50 years of relationship with the space, and 35 years with the defense. And that's exactly what we have been doing, 60 years of R&D. Now, as a result, you build an organization which tomorrow can completely change to do something very different.
Right.
Now, that agility will only make you succeed. And that's exactly where we don't look at it as a capability issue. We don't look at it as an issue where whether you have a technology or not. If the technology is not there, my basic ingredients of what we have, you can recreate something completely new in a matter of 2 years, 3 years.
Right.
It's not impossible.
Right.
All that is needed is a consistent policy which didn't just exist before this government. Now the policies have been put in place. We still await real action because money was just not available. And that's first starting point. If there's no money, there's no business. And if there's no business case, there's no R&D. You will not put money far too ahead. You will not do it 5 years ahead.
Right, Mr. Patil, it's also dear to my heart and to everybody because that is the heart of our capability debate, what we're talking about every time. Back to Air Marshal Deo, we understand Tejas is a story after 30 years, so still we are proud of that. But what about the Kaveri engine? We have not produced. I know engine is also a complex, but how do you look at the DRDO and research capability? You have been watching very closely as the Vice Chief. Your comment will make a difference, please. Go ahead.
My comment will not make too much of difference to Kaveri engine because it's got to do with metallurgy. It's got to do with, some serious research. The countries that have developed these engines have been developing it since Second World War. Okay, so they have a lot of knowledge. And the second thing I want to tell you is that when you compare China model, let's say China wanted to make an engine like Kaveri engine. China is not scared of failure. China copied the Tumansky engine, RD-25 that is there, and they failed many times. But it doesn't matter. They took failure in their stride. That is something that we don't do. Gripen, just look at Gripen. We talked about Saab for some time, and that comparison is not entirely correct that you could have bought Saab, therefore you could have had Gripen. You need to get a perspective from the other side also. Okay, I had a long chat with Saab's MD on this issue. But fact of the matter is that Gripen crashed twice. Do you think that we would have let LCA continue to LCA had crashed twice during its development? We would have jettisoned LCA like a hot potato. Absolutely. Okay, that is our problem, that we are scared of failure. Okay, that is one thing that we are scared of failure, and we are essentially at heart traders. Okay, there are only few people that I see in the industry like Jayant, you know, who are engineers. Okay, mostly we are traders focused on the bottom line. Okay, and this focus on the bottom line should be there. Industry has to survive, but there has to be passion for engineering. That passion for engineering is not there.
So what is to be done with the DRDO? Is a 30,000, you know,
okay, I have a solution for DRDO that I keep telling DRDO chairman, who is a very dear friend of mine and who is a visionary, who thinks a lot. The DRDO should follow what happened in UK to DERA, Defense Evaluation and Research Agency. Defense Evaluation and Research Agency, about 15 years back, converted to Kinetic, a private company.
Yes, coming. Mm-hmm.
And private company, that Kinetic, I remember meeting a squad leader who was in Kinetic, who had just joined Kinetic. He said, we have ruined our defense research because we converted our DERA, equivalent of DRDO, into private company. You know where Kinetic is now? It is the 54th largest defense contractor in the world.
Right.
Okay, that is what DRDO can do. We can start with self-financing labs. I just have one small point to make. Okay, a point was made. First thing, I would like to request industry not to get into tactical issues. Okay, you think that General Asthana, General Jagga, me, okay, we are uneducated people, we are not. Okay,
but Air Marshal industry is not ready to invest substantially. Defense is a heavy investment in the area. Nobody wants to do that. Government has to take initiative when there's some.
Obviously, the government has to take initiative. But I want to tell you something else. Industry should not start thinking for the war fighter. Okay, we are not in America where there are war fighters all along. In America, there are war fighters in the industry. In our industry, there are few war fighters. Okay, so just listen to the war fighter. Okay, listen to him explain. Okay, imbibe it and work together and get to where it is. And please don't run down DPSUs. Bharat Electronics Limited is one of the best DPSUs that is there. They are performing. They are delivering. I put all my money into having a partnership with Bharat Electronics. Okay, and I happen to be the person who decided that the perimeter contract should go to Bharat Electronics. Okay, and Navy had already given it. It's not that that influenced my decision, because I found that industry had a lot of problems. Industry couldn't support a perimeter defense system that didn't have the resources, that didn't have the knowledge.
Right. So perfect. Yes, Air Marshal. I continue this question to Major General Shashi Asthana. I know your 40 years experience, your experience with Ordnance Factory and the research quality from DRDO and the budget issue. We need to build up a massive mission, increase the budget of 10%, at least for the research. How do you look at such thing, you know? And that's the capability to come across. That is a fundamental debate of the whole Make in India thing that we are falling into.
I heard all the panelists and a number of concerns also were raised. While I agree with a number of concerns, but I must clarify a few things which will answer the question as well. Firstly, no major power in the world has become a power by the government or PSUs or the defense manufacturing by the government. Private players are important and they cannot be wished away. And therefore, we have to create a climate for private players and private partnership. Number one. Number two, we appreciate that R&D is costly. We also appreciate that our procedures don't allow a fixed order, and it does not make an economic sense for any capitalist to put that money unless you have a fixed order. So therefore, the partnerships, the collaborations, the various forms of collaborations will have to be there, and that is why you find so many categories in the DPP draft. If you have any points, you kindly get back to the government on that, number one. Number two, we are that, as Air Marshal mentioned, we are not that novice. Our GSQR says very clearly that this is our basic minimum requirement. And when we test the equipment, certainly we are not asking for the moon. The equipment, and Jackie will bear with me, and everybody is absolutely very well clued up with the procedures, that if it meets the GSQR, I cannot say no to it.
Right.
That is the procedure. That is the procedure.
Right.
And therefore, so therefore, we are in a position that if we want indigenous manufacturing, And secondly, the new ideas which are coming in. I met in Washington, I met the Americans. They are saying our contractors are going in the Iraq war, and the contract given to them is, we want one squadron of 14 tanks always operational, and rest everything he maintains himself, even in the war.
Perfect.
But the question is,
yes, General Asthana, sorry to cut you since we are running short of time. You made a valuable point. Coming back finally to Lieutenant General R.K. Jagga, how do you look at this defense?
I would just like to answer 2-3 things before I get on to this budget.
Yes, yes. Very quickly, please.
जो है ना, ये low tech equipment है. 25 March को नहीं था. Today we are making so much. Let's not compare how we can do in PB with the complex system which various platforms require. That is one part. Secondly, I'll request and add on to what Air Marshal Deo was saying. I leave it to the war fighters how tactical and strategy has to be made. अगर आर-पार की लड़ाई नहीं होगी, वो इसलिए नहीं होगी because we got the platform, we got tanks, we got ICVs, we got aircraft. So we may say आर-पार की लड़ाई नहीं होगी, but नहीं होगी because of this. Third part about the budget. You see, we know this is what we have. We all say that 1.5% of GDP is not enough. Mr. Patil was saying कि भाई committed liabilities इतनी हैं. 74% FDI, people will come if they feel that they will get orders. अगर मेरे पास पैसा नहीं होगा खरीदने के लिए, तो why will somebody put in the money? So that is the crux.
Perfect, perfect. So Lieutenant Jagga, you made a point. Now since we're also Facebook, I think we are some 2-3 lakh people and a lot of questions. There's a one question quick to Mr. Patil's Jonas Bhutia from Philip Capital to Mr. Patil. Do you expect the capital defense budget to see a steep increase over the next 3, 4, 5 years, like we have historically seen in sectors like roads and railway in the time of crisis? How do you look at the answer to Mr. Jonas Bhutia?
I can only say you're asking me to do a crystal ball gazing. The frank answer is I don't know. All I know is today there's a specific commitment by the government. They will create a one-time kickoff kind of extra kitty, and that's exactly where it is. Whether that keeps on getting replicated year on year, the condition of the economy will decide.
Right. To Lieutenant General R.K. Jagga, there is a question I think Kashyap Gali has asked. Does corporatization of ordnance factory result in a halt in releasing orders? To Mr. Jagga, quickly, please.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, does corporatization of ordnance factory result in a halt in releasing orders?
I think corporatization of ordnance is required. It should be done. There are various models available. And I would say ordnance factories have got the experience. They have the infrastructure. They can do a lot. They have to give an autonomy to perform. And once they are given this autonomy, I think ordnance factories will perform.
Perfect. To Mr. Rajiv, I think somebody, Gaurav Agrawal, is asking, what are the opportunity for industry like us who manufacture many sheet metal products, cables and shelters for the industry like telecom and railways? If you have to comment, Rajiv Mehrotra, please.
I just want to, 2-3 things I want to clarify. Number one, we don't need any FDI. We have the technology, we have the facility, we have the capacity, capability, everything. We don't need any FDI. Number two, I'm just limiting myself to only telecom and surveillance. The specifications are never published, never given in tender. This is, Major General Sir, about other things I don't know. We have gone through this. It's a very funny, I mean, there is zero specification. That's the thing in telecom. And that's why maybe we have such a poor telecom network and they use mobile for this. Our buying of telecom products is at 3 times than what is possible from Indian sources. So we don't get the orders, or get the orders, they don't discuss. So until unless, and Major General have said, and you also said, until unless the Army and Air Force, they engage the industry and work with them as partners, not as vendors, not as suppliers, because you are the only one. They are more close to foreigners than Indians. You may feel bad, but this is the fact. What we have gone through, we are sharing that.
Right.
Unless they engage, and the same thing for the gentleman who asked the question. All these things, entire capability is there, technology is there, zero money is required, only orders are required, and agree to the specification before you come out with the tender. That's it.
Right. From Mihir Viswas, failed to understand why can't we emulate ISRO model in DRDO. It is close to the aerospace, and again DRDO back to, so to Air Marshal Deo, what you like to talk about. Why can't we emulate ISRO model? Why can't we focus and produce something remarkable for our defense sector, for the fighter plane, something like that? This is a question, please.
I can tell you that in case of ISRO, because we exactly partner ISRO now for beyond 50 years. And that's essentially where we have seen it very, very closely. ISRO is someone who started virtually with scientific books and created every of their product in-house. If I draw a parallel, identical parallel exists in defense. The segments in which it exists does not get talked because they are in the top secret category. So in strategic defense, there is no capability India does not have. Yes. Every possible capability India has. Where we lack is where there's our buying system simply says, no, I cannot buy on anything based on knowledge or based on technology. It has to be L1 and it has to be through a competitive route. And I think that's exactly what has killed the tactical aspect of our war machinery. Strategic aspect is completely indigenous, completely built with our own knowledge and our own technologies. And that is something which is there. And there's so many programs in this country which actually will show you that. Right. Scenario is, it has not happened in the every other aspect. And I'm one who championing saying, anyway, our buying system cannot make a decision within 5 years. So if you decide not to buy anything and say all this I'm going to buy from within the country, people will develop it in that time and deliver it to you within that 5 years. And that's exactly what in terms of policy direction one needs to do. And I call it उपवास. हिंदी तो हम सब लोग समझते हैं, उपवास क्यों करते हैं हम लोग? हमने decide करना है कि for few years we are not going to buy. We'll simply make that money and opportunities available to industry. Industry will deliver.
Perfectly, Mr. Patil. Yeah. Back to Mr. Deo. So, Air Marshal Deo, could you conclude? Shall we seize the moment now? And it is time to seize the moment when we have the crisis. Can we make in India a success story now in the real terms? Your concluding remarks, please.
Manish, I have seized the moment. I have retired, nothing to my name. I set up an industry. I intend making cruise missiles and guided weapons, and gave a run for his money to Jayant. Okay, because he also is
welcome, Air Marshal.
Yes, indeed. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is. The second thing is that industry must now step up. Okay, I have seen from the other side 2 years back, things have only improved. I have put my neck on the line and denied contracts to Cisco to make sure that an Indian company gets it. And I thought for a moment that I could be court-martialed, but I was complimented by everybody in the Ministry of Defense. We stashed a contract from Cisco, and just like Mr. Mehrotra is saying, we sat down with the people who could, deliver in this telecom field, particular switches that we are buying from Cisco. And the aim was simple. We want to replace Cisco switches with indigenized switches. And that happened. Tejas is the company that got the contract. Okay, they competed with other Indian companies. They got the contract, and they got a fairly large contract. And AFNet, which is a very modern and working telecom system that has got a whole lot of features that are currently not available privately. You'll find that thing has got a very significant contribution from Tejas. That is an Indian company. Okay, so this is the moment. Okay, as an entrepreneur, I'm very thankful to the government for giving us this opportunity.
So perfectly, so as you said, industry must step in, MOD must step in, DRDO must step in, and whatever said and done, we understand the COVID scenario. We also anticipating the budget cut, but security and defense, as we see our border across, as we see what is happening in Sikkim, we cannot falter. We must be ready now. Thank you very much, gentlemen, distinguished panelists. Thank you very much for coming on Businessworld. Thank you, Lieutenant Jagga. Thank you, Mr. Patil. Thank you, General Asthana. Thank you, Mr. Mehrotra. Thank you, Air Marshal. Thank you very much for coming with us. Manish Kumar Jha, Businessworld. Thank you. We'll continue debating on that, sir.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Manish.